In this video, we are going to be talking about 3 of the 4 different types of sentences and the rules behind each of these types. We're going to start out by talking about simple sentences. So a simple sentence is made up of a subject and a predicate, which is also known as a verb phrase. These 2 sentences are examples of simple sentences. We have the baby, which is the subject, cried for food, which is the predicate, and that makes a simple sentence. We also have in this one a simple sentence as well. The spotted dog is running loose in the neighborhood. We have one subject and one predicate or verb phrase. So simple sentences can also be called independent clauses, and this is important to keep in mind as we go on and talk about compound and complex sentences. So definitely keep those in mind. And an independent clause is called an independent clause because it can express a single complete thought that can stand on its own. It's independent. If a sentence does not contain a subject and a predicate, it is a fragment. That is very important to keep in mind. So without the subject and without the predicate, it is going to be a fragment. So running loose in the neighborhood would not be a complete sentence. It would be a fragment because we have no subject attached. That's why we need the spotted dog is. So things start to get tricky when we start to have compound subjects. So sentences can have compound subjects and still be simple, and what that means is that 2 or more nouns are doing the same thing. Here's an example here. We have 2 sentences. Megan ate too much food. Ron ate too much food. These are 2 simple sentences, and you wouldn't write them back to back like that because it's repetitive. Instead, what you would do is you would combine Megan and Ron into a compound subject, and you would say Megan and Ron ate too much food. And so that is still a simple sentence because they become one subject that is doing one action. By adding them together with and, we're compounding them and making them a group doing the same single action. Now, it's also important to keep in mind that sentences can have compound predicates, meaning one person can be doing, or one noun can be doing multiple things. So here we have Megan ate too much food, Megan felt sick. That's repetitive structure. Instead, we can combine those, and it still is a simple sentence. Megan ate too much food and felt sick. Still a simple sentence. Now, even if we wanted to, we could also, and I've already forgotten the name of the guy in the first sentence, we could say Megan and Bob ate too much food and felt sick. That is still a simple sentence because we have a compound subject and a compound predicate, but one subject and one predicate or verb phrase. And it's important to get a solid understanding of simple sentences and of what a compound predicate or a compound subject is before you move on to compound sentences. This is the foundation, the building block for the other types of sentences, so it's very important that you get simple sentences or independent clauses down pat before we move on to compound sentences, which is what we are going to do now. So a compound sentence is formed by combining 2 independent clauses, and independent clauses are also simple sentences. So what we do is we have simple sentences that are joined together, and we can join those together in different ways, but it's important to keep in mind that on each side of a compound sentence there will be a subject and a predicate. Okay, so there will be 2 simple sentences on each side, or 2 independent sentences on each side of the compound sentence. We're going to learn about 2 different ways to do this. This first way, we use what is called a coordinating conjunction. And let's talk about those real quick, and then we'll come back to our examples. So coordinating conjunctions are commonly known by the acronym FAMBOYS, and you might have heard them called FAMBOYS in high school or younger grades. But what FAMBOYS are coordinating conjunctions, and they're used to conjoin independent clauses to create compound sentences. So our coordinating conjunctions are for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. And it's important to keep those in mind as we talk about compound sentences. So now we're going to look at our 2 examples and talk about the rules with them. Let's go ahead and start with this bottom one because it's a little bit shorter. So we have, they chased after him, comma, but he got away. So you'll notice that there is a comma in a compound sentence that is joined by a coordinating conjunction. That punctuation is extremely important. Without it, your sentence is going to be considered incorrect. So make sure you have that comma and that coordinating conjunction or fanboy. And you'll notice to check if you have done this correct, you need to look at both sides of the sentence and make sure there is a subject and a predicate on both sides, because it is only a compound sentence if it's joining two independent thoughts or independent clauses. So we have they is our subject, chased after him. That's a sentence that could stand alone, so that side's good. He got away. Also a sentence that could stand alone, so that side is good. And we see that again in this example up here. The shoplifter had stolen clothes, comma, and he ran once he saw the police. We have a subject on both sides, a predicate on both sides. We have our comma and our coordinating conjunction. Now, where people make the most mistakes is whenever they see an and or a but in a sentence, and they automatically think, oh, that's a fanboy, so it must be a compound sentence. But it's only a compound sentence if you have a subject on both sides. So if we get rid of he, we don't have a subject on each side. So the sentence would read, the shoplifter had stolen clothes, comma, and ran once he saw the police. So this is actually a simple sentence with a compound predicate because we don't have a subject here. We would then have to get rid of this comma right here, and we have the compound predicate, had stolen clothes and ran once he saw the police, and that is joining the two actions that the one subject, the shoplifter, is doing. So for it to be a compound sentence, we must add back in our comma and our subject on the other side. So double check yourself when you are looking at compound sentences. You can cover up all of the second half and check, is the shoplifter had stolen clothes a complete thought? Can it stand by itself? Yes, you're good. Then cover up this side. Is he ran once he saw the police a complete thought? Can it stand on its own? Yes, you're good. Okay, so I strongly encourage you to memorize these fanboys. They are very helpful in writing compound sentences and knowing if we have a compound sentence, but it is just as important to keep in mind the rule that we must have a subject on each side and a predicate on each side. All right, here is another way that we can write a compound sentence. You will notice that we have the same sentences as we did on the other side. And we're joining together two independent clauses, but all we are using is a semicolon. All we need to do is put a semicolon right there, and we have two compound sentences joined together. You don't need any additional words. This semicolon indicates that there are two complete thoughts, two complete sentences on each side. So all we've done is we replace the comma and the fanboy with a semicolon. Now we're going to talk about a third and final way that we can create compound sentences, and that is also going to be using a semicolon as well, but we're going to add a conjunctive adverb in addition to that, so we're going to need a comma. So this is when we combine independent clauses to form a compound sentence using a semicolon followed by a conjunctive adverb and a comma. You'll see that right here. We have the shoplifter had stolen clothes, semicolon, therefore, comma, he ran once he saw the police. You must hug your conjunctive adverb with punctuation. That is important to keep in mind. So you will always follow your conjunctive adverb with a comma, and then you will lead with a semicolon. Okay, same thing for this sentence. We're hugging our conjunctive adverb with punctuation. They chased after him, semicolon, however, comma, he got away. If you miss one little piece of punctuation, the whole sentence becomes wrong. So it's super important that you memorize the different rules when writing compound sentences. And here is a list of common conjunctive adverbs, which we also know as transitional words. These are important to keep in mind and memorize because this will help to be good signals when you're looking at whether or not you have a compound sentence joined by a conjunctive adverb, and transition words to strengthen our writing in general. Now we're going to talk about our third type of sentence, and that is the complex sentence. So a complex sentence is made up of an independent clause, which is that simple sentence that we've been talking about, or that independent thought, and a dependent or subordinate clause. And we're going to talk about what a dependent clause is in just a second, but let's first review an independent clause. So for a clause to be independent, it must have a subject and a predicate. It also can stand alone as a sentence, and it is like an adult who can live on its own, okay? It does not need anything else. It can stand by itself. A dependent clause is like a child who depends on an adult to be complete. It depends on the main clause, or the independent clause, to complete its meaning. It begins with a subordinating conjunction, and the acronym is not as good as fanboys, but we call those an AWUBIS. And we'll talk about the different AWUBIS words, which are called subordinating conjunctions. So the acronym AWUBIS is used to refer to common subordinating conjunctions, and those are although, after, as, while, when, until, because, if, since. Those right there are all subordinating conjunctions. And this is not a complete list, but this gives you a lot of the subordinating conjunctions that you will need to know about, and that will help you in identifying complex sentences and writing complex sentences. So how we know if we have a dependent clause is we have to have all the following to be true. It will start with a subordinating conjunction, one of those AWUBIS. It will have a subject. It will also have a verb, but this is the main thing. It will not express a complete thought. So let's look at some more things with that. Here's the formula. I really encourage you to memorize this formula for writing complex sentences because this is going to help you. So independent clause plus dependent clause. That's one way to write it. The other way to write it would be dependent clause plus comma plus independent clause. So if the independent clause comes first, we do not need a comma. If the dependent clause comes first, we have to add a comma, and you'll see that here. Okay? So our dependent clause for these two sentences, while she studied for the exam. So that has a subject, she, it has a verb, studied, but the subordinating conjunction while makes this to where it's not a complete thought. While she studied for the exam, what happened while she studied for the exam? We need more information. That's why it's a complex sentence, is because we need more information. We need that independent clause to make this dependent clause complete. So, because in this first sentence we have the independent clause first, as you see in this formula here, we do not need a comma. Emma listened to her favorite playlist while she studied for the exam. So if that AWUBIS, or subordinating conjunction, comes in the middle, we don't need a comma. But if a sentence starts with the dependent clause, it starts with that subordinating conjunction, it starts with that AWUBIS, then after that dependent clause, we will need a comma. While she studied for the exam, comma, Emma listened to her favorite playlist. Okay, I don't know for sure why the English language decided to make it complicated and put a comma if you do it one way, don't put a comma if you don't do it the other way. But that's the rules, and so memorizing these formulas will help you to better understand. So guys, it's going to be really important that you study all of these rules that go along with the sentences. Turn them into formulas, okay? If you're a math-minded person, that's going to really help you out into constructing your sentences and knowing where to put punctuation. So good luck as you continue writing different types of sentences and experimenting with grammar.